idea what he meant.
Yeah.
Well, the 49ers got busy winning.
Yeah, they did. Super Bowl.
Just like, look, and I don't want to get all, that way, but just like I told Greg Papa they would.
I'm not remembering it that way.
We welcome in the voice of the Niners, Greg Papa. Good morning, Mr. Papa.
Maybe I should ask this to Jason instead of Dave.
I agree.
Dave, what was your confidence level like at halftime?
Oh, mine? Oh,
yeah.
My confidence level was I started watching the game with my family and some friends. I finished watching the game outside by myself because I couldn't be around anyone because I knew and Greg, it's not just about, see, this is the thing, and I understand this is wrong of me, but when stuff like that happens, it's not just about the Niners losing. Then it turns into the Kings have never won a title. Then it turns into all my shortcomings as a human being. And why do I care about sports at all?
Wow, you go deep.
I go
too far.
Way deep.
So when you were outside and like Dan Gamble goes to the 4th and 2 and the game starts to flip, do you run inside?
No.
Catch?
No.
Ricochet?
No.
You run inside and go,
No, he can't change the karma.
Can't change the karma.
You're locked outside?
I'm stuck outside. And when Campbell, the one time he didn't go for it, when he probably should have at the end of the second half, and they got that field goal, I went, well, maybe there's the door slightly open. And then you're right, as the second half progressed, not only did I not go back inside, but at one point my daughter came outside because it was during halftime, and she wanted to show me this thing she played on her trumpet. They sent her a video for school, and I was like, not now, sweetheart. We'll talk after the game. That's how bad it was.
Drop the sweetheart. At least you dropped the sweetheart.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought one of the big plays of the game, and it may have impacted Campbell's decision to kick the field goal before half, was the third down throw when he missed Jahmyr Gibbs in the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
And he just had to move slightly to his left, very Tom Brady-esque. It wasn't a major reset of the feet. It was just a shuffle. Quarterback's got to have that kind of subtle movement in the pocket. He's a great thrower of the ball, but it's amazing how just the slightest reset of his feet, he becomes unglued. And the story of the game was so many big plays. But Brock and his ability to move his feet, run, obviously the pair of 21-yard scrambles, the 10-yard scramble. Hell, he would have had over 50 yards if they didn't do the kneel downs at the end. But I thought, his ability to run away from a sack, Melifonwu had him. I thought he was sacked. I lost Brock for a second. I thought he was going down. He comes out of it. He hits Juszczyk along the sideline. He's doing the Baryshnikov on the balance beam. Unbelievable. The one where he got out left, hit Juice back across the middle for 22 yards. And the one where he hit Jawan, which broke every rule of quarterback play ever. And Jawan went up with the one hand. He may not have the great vertical leap, Jawan Jennings, 29 inches, but his arm stretched out, like Brandon Ayuk's 81 inches. And then, the B.A. ricochet, the alley-oop, and just so many moments in the game. So that game on its own. And we got to, you got to beat Kansas City. Will that game be remembered forever and ever and ever? Even if they don't win the Super Bowl? Was it that good of a game, or is that one of those games that because they don't close the deal and people only look at the end result, they don't celebrate the journey, that we don't remember? So do they have to win a week from Sunday to make that game be the catch game?
I know my answer is, Jason.
I would say probably yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't negate how great of a game it was, but I think over time, Greg, it'll unfortunately, in my mind, be remembered for a Super Bowl loss, though that game was historic in its own right and something the Niners hadn't done, something NFC teams hadn't done, and this particular group of Niners hadn't done. So it was great, but I think they got to close the deal.
Yeah, which leads to Kansas City. And I just, Championship Sunday, I was depressed because I thought they would beat Baltimore, but I was hoping Baltimore would beat them. I was hoping Buffalo would beat them, obviously, the week before. And what a great playoff run. So that sub-zero freezer bowl game at Arrowhead against Miami, and they just pummeled them. And then to go into Buffalo and win, go into Baltimore and win, the two top seeds in the AFC, and this guy staring us in the face all over again. And I know they're different, but they're really good, and he's hard to beat. So we'll see how it goes. We'll get into it more, but they're not going to be able to play, a C-, D+ half and come back and play an A+ half. You're going to have to play a solid A game for 60 minutes to beat this guy.
That's Greg Papa joining us as we look. A couple of narratives have been destroyed. Kyle Shanahan can't, make comebacks. Brock Purdy had the comeback against Green Bay, and then Keyshawn Johnson said, "I think comeback should be 10 points," and then he did that. But as I said in Beverly Hills Cop, I don't think the Chiefs are falling for the banana in the tailpipe like the Lions. So I mean, am I wrong here? But this ain't going to work with Pat Mahomes. This comeback.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, games have different DNAs, and Kansas City looked off balance for most of the year. That game on Christmas Day against the Raiders, it was like, what's going on? They had back-to-back snaps where the Raiders scored defensive touchdowns. So anything's possible.
Yeah. But
I think it's playoff Pat is what you're up against, and regular season Pat is historically good. He's one of the greatest of all time. He really is. I mean, just from pure ability, and I don't get into, accolade. Dan Marino was such a good player. You have no idea. Joe Willie Namath, he could just flick his wrist and the ball would go 65 yards in the air, and he had terrible knees. The skill level. So it's not all about the end result. I look at the ability, but as far as pure ability, this guy, and he does things you would never teach fundamentally. I mean, I go back to, Trey Lance and the fundamentals, and I think Trey just didn't have the confidence that this guy, who has the swagger of this guy,
Steph Curry,
but Steph didn't have it immediately. But yeah. I hear you, Dave, and I remember Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs, came on with me during the 2018 year. And if you remember, Mahomes got off to an amazing year that year, amazing start. He was throwing like 5 tutties every game. Remember the game he had against the Niners at Arrowhead when Jimmy tore his ACL? He had a touchdown pass where he rolled all the way to his right and threw on the run in the back of the end zone. It was like, whoa, what was that? Who could do that? And Mitch dropped right away the Steph Curry on us. And I was like, whoa. But then, and you know what today is? Today's February 2nd. So it's Groundhog's Day, and we got to go back to Super Bowl 54 and 2-3 chip Jet Wasp. And that was the Steph Curry moment where they're down and he's clanking. And Mahomes in that Super Bowl was confused by the Niners. He was not good. I don't know if he had nerves. I think initially he had nerves. And then later in the game, he couldn't figure out the defense. And he was grounding slants. I was like, what are you doing? And then he threw one right to Fred Warner. He was trying to throw a deep curl to Tyreek. And is Fred Warner invisible? He's sitting right there. He never saw him. So, and then it turned. And then like Steph Curry, you make one splash and it's boom, tidal wave. And he hit that wasp play and he backed up. Watch that play back. His backpedal. My initial call was he underthrew Tyreek. He underthrew him because he backpedaled 17 yards to get away from, and Bosa got help. Anyway, yeah, he is a little Steph Curry like that way where once it starts, you can't stop him. And they had 10 points with 7:13 to play in that Super Bowl, and they wound up at 31. So it's a great challenge. I'm excited by it. Obviously, there's great respect, in basketball, Pop talks about appropriate fear. I'm trying to find the level of appropriateness to fear them because it's beyond fear. It's just, wow. And their defense is so much better. It's maybe the best Chiefs defense going back to the Derek Thomas, Neil Smith days, or I don't know. You may even have to go back to the Buck Buchanan, Willie Lanier, Jim Marsalis, Bobby Bell, Emmett Thomas, those great guys. Anyway, they're really good. So you're going to have to play a great game. But if you get behind Mahomes, can you come back on him? Yeah. I mean, why? You can. The other way to look at it is if you get ahead of Mahomes, can he come back on you? And it's hell yeah. What he's done, not just the Super Bowl against us, but that playoff run. What was he down against Houston? 24-0.
Right.
Yep.
They came back and scored 51 points. So what a great matchup. I go Joe versus Dan Marino to me was one of the most underrated Super Bowls of all time. And I'm not going to say Brock's Joe although he does have similar moments where he looks like, maybe he will be Joe. But it's just Marino, to me, was Mahomes before Mahomes, and they found a way to beat him.
I hope he's Joe, Jason.
I do too.
He might be.
Yeah. The other thing that happened, I would say, against the Niners that was concerning, I would say, was the way Green Bay ran against them, and certainly Detroit in the first half. Niners did a much better job in the second half. As much as we're talking about Mahomes, Greg, what do you think about the Chiefs' ability? Will they be able to run on the 49ers at all?
Well, their running game is different than what Green Bay did was steal Bill Callahan's playbook from the Cleveland game, and it was all that outside to the left, crack tosses, pin and pull it's called now, where they crack down on the outside end and they pull a tackle on a guard and they get out in space, and they ran it right away. Kareem Hunt, Ford, the other back, they ran it all day on the Niners. And then Minnesota, first play of the next game in Minneapolis, ran the same play, even though the Niners worked on it all week and they got to the edge. So Green Bay got there with Aaron Jones. Certainly Detroit got there with Jahmyr Gibbs, whether it was a flip 90 play, which is a counter off a jet sweep and a toss going wide, whatever. Their running game's a little different with Pacheco. He's more of a downhill guy. But the guy that I'm thinking about is Mecole Hardman.
Yeah.
Remember when they came into Levi's last October? It was McCaffrey's first game. They ran a jet sweep and a jet pass in that game. And Mecole Hardman scored 3 touchdowns in the game. And it was either a pass or, passes where the quarterback's in the shotgun and he flips it forward, a jet sweep, the quarterback's under center, and he turns back and hands off. Anyway, they got the edge over and over again. They game planned Nick Bosa. They didn't block Nick Bosa on those plays. It was called an influence block, where by the alignment of the lineman's feet, and Andy Reid's an old lineman, direction. And they attacked Charvarius Ward, the former Chief, over and over again. So I don't know how he's going to do it. He may just run toss cracks and pin and pulls, but I know he's going to run jet sweeps. I don't know if it's going to be to Hardman, though. He's kind of lost his way. He left and went to the Jets. He came back, and he's having a hard time locating the ball. The Buffalo game, he fumbled twice. And one time he fumbled right going into the end zone, and it skipped through the end zone for a touchback. And I don't think he's touched the ball since. So they may not use him. But definitely they're going to try to run. But honestly, I hope they give it to Pacheco 20 times. He can grind you down. He's a good back. He scores. But what you really fear is Mahomes hitting his back foot, going to Kelce, going to Rashee Rice, and then running. Brock had a great game running in the championship game. Mahomes has just been unreal this year. Running through a 4-man line, but then you can't blitz him. If you blitz him like Lord Fangio did in the Miami playoff game, he's going to carve you up. So I don't know what to do with him. You got to go the 4-man line. The Gold Rush they got to stay in their gaps. They got to seal it off. But he finds a hatch, and Fred and Dre got to run him down and hunt him down and put him on the ground. But they're going to run. There's no doubt. They're a more balanced team right now. But I think deep down in my soul, what really concerns me the most is number 15.
Greg Papa, voice of the Niners, with us. Mecole Hardman, 2 carries, 28 yards and 2 touchdowns in that 41-23 when the Chiefs had over the Niners that Greg was.
And he caught one too. He had 3 touchdowns, didn't he?
Yes, he did. 4 catches, 32 yards and a touchdown. So yeah,
they were all that same motion. It was all jet sweep, jet pass. It was the same play.
So conversely, what is it is there something that stands out to you that the Lions did well that the Chiefs do not do well that the Niners can exploit next Sunday?
Whoa. That the Lions do well, that the Chiefs do not do well. I don't. Jason, help me. I love the Lions. They're great.
Yeah.
But I think, everything you wanted to attack with Detroit, like it was pretty simple. Get Goff off the midline. Just get him to reset his feet. That is not the story with this guy. He can get out of the pocket. I almost wonder if you want to play Mahomes a little like the Niners played Jalen Hurts, where, I'm not going to say you must rush him, but you do it contained to try to keep him in the pocket And that's ridiculous because he's one of the greatest pocket quarterbacks ever. But when he gets out of the pocket, he's trouble. And then I think when I see him sometimes he'll throw the ball away, he looks confused on where to go. Like, even though he beats Buffalo in the playoffs every year, Buffalo has beaten him in the regular season. And just watching how Sean McDermott plays him, they drop and they play coverage against him. And they try to, a little bit like Belichick played a young Peyton Manning. Rush 3, drop 8. You're not going to rush 3, but drop 7. So the Chiefs' weakness compared to Detroit's, Dave, statistically, is their run defense. Now, the Niners had a hard time running on Detroit in the first half, and then McCaffrey, just the sheer will of McCaffrey and Brock's legs on big scrambles, they were able to run in the second half. So I would say Detroit was a top 2 or 3 run defense in the league. And so the one thing that Kansas City does not do as well as Detroit does is their run defense. But this is Steve Spagnuolo, and he's one of the best. And they to me, they have the ability to stop the run. But they get caught in some things. They're not going to have Charles Omenihu in this game, the former Niner, which will throw their pass rush. So I think you can run at Chris Jones. He's a great pass rusher, but he kind of picks his spots when to rush the quarterback or when to play the run. So it finally dawned on me about my answer. Their run defense is not as good as Detroit's, but beyond that, yeesh, they're pretty good.
Yeah. Greg, how about I thought Kelce was amazing in the AFC Championship game. I think caught all 11 targets. Obviously, he's legendary, but what are the Niners' plan, you think, for him?
I don't know. I mean, and he's been off, most of the year. He had a foot injury week 5 against Minnesota, and he played through it. He's had a lot of drops this year. The first playoff game against Miami, and it was, minus 27 degrees, wind chill, whatever it was ridiculous. He had like 3 drops in the first half of that game. He didn't look good. And then he came alive, and then he went to Buffalo, and he was the difference. And then, like you said, the Baltimore game, look at that first drive. The 4th down catch, he made an amazing 3rd down diving catch, the back shoulder touchdown against Kyle Hamilton. Mahomes. Hamilton hadn't gotten up a touchdown all year. And he gets beat on that play just because it's so precise. So I think the first thing you got to do with him is jam him and get to him right off the line. The problem is he's really not a tight end. He's a wide receiver. He's a big receiver. So they could align him where it's tough to get your hands on him. But I think you want to reroute him. You want to jam him. And then he's just a matchup problem. He reminds me so much of Antonio Gates, the great former Charger, where Antonio Gates was the slowest guy in the field. He ran like a 5.5 40. But you couldn't cover him. He just was big body. He was a former basketball player, and he'd shield you, and he'd just get the rebound on you. And every 3rd down, Rivers was throwing to Antonio Gates. It was just over and freeze. So he's a little bit like that. So I don't know what to do with him. I know on 3rd down, 4th down, when Andy goes for it, he's the guy. Do you flat out treat him like a gunner on the punt team and just vice him? Just put a guy on each side and just double him? The old days, the old quandary was, who do you double, Travis Kelce or Tyreek? And sometimes Belichick would double both of them and then just zone up on the other side. You don't have Tyreek to worry about, but they got speed on the other side, and they got this young guy, Rashee Rice. So he's got to get his catches. You just got to get him on the ground. He's such a smart player, just as far as leverage and reading how to get open, whether it's man or zone. He's a great player. But I don't know. I part of me thought put Charvarius Ward on him. I don't think they'll do that, anything that dramatic. I think it'll basically be a zone concept, and maybe Jair Brown gets him some. But ultimately, a lot of it's going to, be Dre and Fred being able to chase him down when they are playing zone, or picking him up in man and just getting him on the ground after he catches the ball.
Greg Papa with us. Greg, as we wrap up, I want to ask you one non-basketball question, because I know you got a keen sports mind. I was super excited about this yesterday, and I know if anybody can poke holes in it, it'll be you. So everyone's arguing about the 65 game limit, right, for the NBA and MVP and all that stuff. Joel Embiid, I know.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been talking about it on your show. So the whole point we were making yesterday is like when Barry Bonds broke the home run record, right? It wasn't that he hit .46 home runs a game, and when Patrick Mahomes throws for 40 touchdowns, we don't say he threw for 3.2 touchdowns a game or whatever. Why don't we just take the NBA and award the scoring title to who scores the most points, the rebounding title to who has the most rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, and that's how we do the MVP and all these other awards. And then you don't have to have a limit because if you get hurt, you're not winning the awards.
Well, it used to be like that.
Did it?
Will Chamberlain one year led the league in. It was one of the two categories. I forgot. I think he led the league in total assists because Wilt never came out of the game. He'd play all 82 and he'd play all 48 minutes. I think the year that he led the league, it was with Philadelphia, the Sixers, after he left the Warriors before he went to the Lakers. But they used to do it that way. And then they changed it based on average per game. So there's two ways to look at it. And I mean, the stats are there. You could look at it any way you want. You're saying awarding a scoring title to the guy who scores the overall most points.
Yeah, we need to rethink all that. We need. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you're the old you can. You could do it that way.
Yeah.
And that would be based on how you vote. I mean, the guy who leads the league in scoring doesn't always win the MVP. In fact, very seldom.
Sure.
But I think in this case, first of all, it is the commissioner and the collective bargaining agreement and the union trying to mandate how coaches and teams run their teams. You can't tell me when to play a guy or not play a guy. Seriously? If I don't want to play a guy, I'm not playing a guy. And I was around Greg Popovich, and I remember one game in Miami where he all started this. He sent Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker home.
Miami, right?
They were going to Miami to play a TNT game.
Yep.
He put them on Southwest Airlines and flew them back to San Antonio.
Remember this?
And he said that there was no fine, and that the commissioner was mad. You can't tell me how to run my team. Pat Riley in the 80s, once the Lakers clinched the number one seed, he wasn't playing Kareem and Magic at the end of the year. You can't, like the last game of the year. The 49ers didn't play Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. You're going to tell it, you can't tell us who to play and not play. So they were trying to do that because television wants that. Whenever the Warriors go to Denver, Steph ain't playing. You got to play in the altitude, and Dr. Celebrini's not going to let him play in those games, especially on a back-to-back. That ain't happening. So now, but the TV networks drive it. So what do we do? Now we put in this bogus minimum amount of games played. One year, Patrick Ewing won the Rookie of the Year. He played 50 games, and he was by far the best rookie that year. So what are you going to do? I don't like it. It's a product of the commissioner's office trying to dictate how the teams run their games, their team, which they should stay out of. And then the TV, the commissioner and the TV networks looking at together. But I think in this case, Embiid, he's not playing anywhere near 65 games.
No.
I don't know why he played in that game. That was painful.
Yeah, it was.
That was like watching Bill Walton during his Clippers days, or I'm from Buffalo and know the great Bob Lanier, and he probably got hurt at St. Bonaventure. And Bob, when they drafted him number one in Detroit, he was in a hospital bed with a cast from his hip all the way to his ankle. He couldn't run like he did when he was younger. Watching Embiid just get up and down, I'm like, what's going on? All he could do was launch threes, and he was awful. And then the irony is the basketball gods get to you. The injury he suffered had nothing to do with that. It may have made it worse, but he's laying on the ground, and Kuminga falls on him, and his knee goes the wrong direction, and he hyperextends his knee. So he shouldn't have played. I don't think it even, the great Chris Haynes from Sacramento had the report. He knows he's not playing 65 games. He may not get to 55 this year. So that's not a motive, I wouldn't think. And now, will he play against the Warriors next week? So I don't like any of it. And I think it's just the commissioner's office in the suits trying to come in and tell people how to run their team. They can't do that.
That's Greg Papa.
Yeah.
I knew I could go there. I knew I could throw him a curveball on 1-2, and he wasn't going to foul it off. He's going to take it to left center. It's triple. Triple's alley.
So on our show, I think I mentioned that for maybe 30 seconds and moved on. So we're not talking Warriors till after this game a week from Sunday.
We will talk to you next week. I'm looking.
Next week I'll be in Vegas.
Yes.
Are you guys coming? Are you showing up? Any presents there?
We're sending middays. We're not going and you know this, like it's such a waste. The mornings it's tough to go because you get like
on a West Coast Super Bowl,
right? Yeah. Like Brandon Lang and like John Feliciano, the 1952 Packer who's hawking Activia. You know what I'm saying? Like it's tough for us to go in the mornings. So
right. Does he get the guest? You mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're sending the middays there, and we'll be hopefully you'll be available to talk to us as well. You're the only Radio Row guy we want.
Really?
Yeah, we don't care. We want you. Right. We're gonna dance with the.
What if I get you Joe Montana? You know what I'll get you? After he goes into the Hall of Fame the night before, we'll get you Patrick Willis to come on the show.
Yes.
Would you take Patrick Willis?
We'll go with yes.
Yeah, you get us Patrick Willis, and we'll get you a bottle of whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. Maybe Van Winkle.
We'll deliver that. As long as we get our Greg Papa, that's what we care about.
Yeah.
We appreciate
From Vegas, baby.
From Vegas. Greg Papa hits Vegas, baby. Hey, I got a barbecue.
And this time the Raiders have to let me in the stadium.
We haven't even talked. We're going to talk about that whole thing next week, too.
We're going to do that.
See you, brother. Take care.
Guys. Be good, guys.
All right, thank you.
That's a whole different Donahue.
Yes.
Right, Raider fan having to see Chiefs and Niners logos on the end zone before they've played a playoff game there. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll take a break.